Aloha mai kākou. Mahalo for attending a presentation on our project, Piko Wauke. This work is named after the Wauke plant, which is used to make kapa, and Piko, the tiny rootlets extending from an older Wauke plant. Inspired by Mana'o, Kuha'o Zane shared, we ask all of you, what is it that you represent? What is it that you show kuleana for? We asked ourselves the same question. So this team joins a community of cultural practitioners and stewards who have a responsibility to love and care for Wauke, kapa, the Lahui, and Hawaii. We are Hui Piko Wauke. Our first team member is the Wauke plant. I'm Ku Iolani. I'm a learning experience designer. We have Ezekiel, a plant ecologist, Kaninau, a steward and educator of Kahili Beach Preserve, and finally Puakea, an educator and kapa practitioner.
Wauke, whose inner bark is made into the finest cloth called kapa, came by way of Va'a to the shores of Hawaii by our ancestors. To today, as it was in Po'ekahiko, kapa serves as a primary source of national pride and form of identity. It marks the sacred in ceremonies and rites of passage, and is used for day-to-day practicalities such as clothing, currency, and trade. However, when woven fabrics became more widely available, the craft quietly lay dormant for nearly 100 years. Now, for the last 60 or so years, through much studying, many pule, and with the help of our Tongan, Fijian, and Samoan oceanic cousins, kapa making has made its way back into the hands of our people. But where are the stories of this held? We see there's an abundance of knowledge in the mo'olelo and practice of kupuna, but the specific information necessary for the proliferation of this craft is nearly non-existent in books or articles. And through our academic research, we were unable to find any contemporary references to the varieties of Wauke grown in Hawaii before 1778, or how different varieties were cared for, or what recognized varieties were still being cultivated today. And we began to recognize this gap between what was known and what was necessary to know if we were to grow the art of kapa, and specifically if we were to grow Wauke well. But before we moved on to any sort of project, we had to tend the soil from which our ideas would grow.
So we entered this project asking ourselves, how can we use Wauke to rebuild and reestablish relationships with the same amount of care our kupuna had when carrying the Wauke plant across many miles of ocean and many oceans of time? In working to find our why, water, a source of endless life and inspiration, we landed on the following goals. To secure access to the availability of Wauke resources for the Lahui, to promote a best practices approach to growing and caring for Wauke, focused on sustainability and long-term care instead of novelty, to strengthen partnerships between stewards and Wauke and community, and to increase opportunities to learn more about kapa practitioners and their work.
So throughout this whole process, we've had an abundance of ideas, but some difficulty with focusing our time and energy into a specific campaign for this program. But with the process and tools used over the last few months, we were able to narrow down that the most significant places of overlap for our personal interests in our work is in bringing Aina and people together. Before committing to any particular campaign, we needed to talk with practitioners. Through our discussions with them, we learned that we needed to approach this work as haumana, as students, and that by sharing our learning process, we strive to raise what is considered to be the baseline level of knowledge and practice on Wauke and kapa for the Lahui by propagating the knowledge of these kumu and kupuna. Nana Ike Kumu has been something that has guided and will continue to guide us in our work.
Due to its natural kuka style, to gather the stories, interviewing was the chosen platform. We reached out to several kapa sisters, Galani, Rowan, Sabra, and Auntie Kovai, to partner with and gain valuable insight on how we might best approach this initiative. A huge shift happened from this place of thinking that the focus would be to develop partnerships between practitioners and land stewards, schools and nurseries for the purpose of getting more Wauke into the ground, to a recognition that a shortage of interest or Wauke isn't the issue, but that the patches of Wauke that do exist are often not properly cared for. So we thought to develop a survey.
With the goal of constructing an online open educational storehouse, we are documenting these stories in two ways. We are recording interviews and providing a link to an online survey. With the help of Dan Kinzer, we are able to populate this gathered knowledge into an ArcGIS story map. To give you an idea of what that looks like, the left image is the survey platform, and the right is where the data is populated. This is a visual interactive way to access, input, and house this ike mana'o provided by kapa practitioners and Wauke stewards. So imagine if it was more commonplace to don a kihe made of kapa instead of robed in a hot, sticky China-made polyester gown at graduation, or in place of awarding athletic champions with plastic trophies, they instead crowned with soft, hand-beaten kapa kihe that can continue to be proudly worn at special occasions throughout their lives, thereby representing our identity through the fabric of our people. We are working towards creating a Wauke-based fiber shed, a farm-to-fabric model for Hawaii, to develop Wauke resources with a connection to its sacredness, by empowering schools and garden teachers to work Wauke into their curriculums, normalizing relationships between keiki and Wauke, and hopefully a kapa fiber industry that encourages a regenerative economy here in the Pai'aina. With this as our backbone, currently we are generating connections and building relationships through interviewing practitioners and Wauke stewards throughout the Pai'aina, and with that, continuing to populate our story map with Wauke mo'oku auhau, or Wauke genealogy.
There's a profound mana held in the memories of our childhood. Yeah. One such memory for me was of being a young girl in the mid-'80s, watching my kumuhula Auntie Kawai singing with the rustling leaves of her Wauke as she would pluck the side shoots to make for good clean kapa, caressing them as you do with your loved ones. When a child bears witness to their community tending to these reciprocal loving relations between themselves and Aina, they see that they too have a familial place amongst the natural world, thereby reducing the impact of this colonizing, extractive mentality, resulting in pilina, this obligation to the land to heal and mend the broken relationships with nature for our ancestors and mo'opuna.
So we're looking for people to help us weave a collective story of Wauke. That includes those who want to share their stories, whether they're kapa practitioners or Wauke stewards, others who might want to help us tell those stories, and also funding for the stories being written. So please contact us at picowauke@gmail.com and
Oh, the next campaign is to become friends?
Friendship!